Welcome to the first. You have a story. If you look back on your life, you've done things for the first time that no one in your family, in your town, in the country has done. This is Dr. Sandi. You have unknowingly paved the way for others without knowing it or even acknowledging it. This is where you tell your story so that those who come after you can walk in your footsteps to build their own firsts. We're here today. I'm speaking with the Reverend Dr. Larry McCord. I've known Dr. McCord for quite some time, and I'm so excited to talk about his life and the many firsts that he's had in his life. Welcome to the first, Dr. McCord.
Thank you for having me, Dr. Sandi Webster.
You're more than welcome. Why don't we jump right into it and talk about when you were young, how you started out in athletics and how that impacted your life? I know you did track, you did a lot of other things, but can you tell me a little bit about being the first person in athletics in your family and how that impacted a lot of your life?
Well, my mother told me she ran track, but given the fact that I wasn't there when she used to run, I believe she did. But I was a five-time state champion, and I had the record. Back then, there was segregation, so we competed among African Americans. There was no integration when I started competing. So I had the record for the fastest African American high school boy in America. And if memory serves me correct, I think I ran something like between a 9.2 and a 9.4, but that was faster than anybody else.
That's
100-yard
amazing.
dash. In addition to that, when we would compete for the state championship, I had to do the 100 individually, the 200. I ran on the 4x1 and 4x2 relays. I would do the broad jump and the high jump. I had 7 events to compete in.
You were the whole
And the
team.
hurdles. No, they made me do 7 things because I would always either finish the winner or get second. And so it went by the team that got the most points would
Ah,
win the meet. So I was high point man both my junior and senior year. And we won 5 championships. I started in the 8th grade. Uh, so that got me numerous scholarships.
wonderful. And so, how did you tell me more about the scholarships and how you learned about what it can do for others?
Well, uh, I'm glad you asked me that because here's what happens. There wasn't anybody that was going to give me money to send to school because I don't know that anyone had any money to give me to go to college. So I decided that I would ask God to give me the talent that I needed to escape the ghetto. It's a joke, the ghetto, because I lived in a place where I didn't consider it the ghetto. It was a very nice place. However, the opportunities for African Americans were limited. I wanted to go to either,
Where is this place?
huh?
Where did
I
you
grew
grow
up in
up?
Lutcher, Louisiana, and actually, Lutcher was not even on the map, but we won the championship so much they actually put Lutcher on the map for the state because we were the record holders. And you know, one little funny story is we would go to a track meet with just enough athletes in the back of the station wagon, and we pull up next to somebody with a Greyhound bus. And some of the schools we competed against were 4A, we were single A. Now that had to do with how many kids were in your school. I remember having 400 kids in my whole school, and we would compete against schools that had thousands of people. And they would bring a bus with 40 or 50, and we would go somewhere with 6 to 12 people. We would beat them. But that's why I had to do 6 and 7 events. I had to be a lot of people,
Right.
but we would beat them every time. So they would laugh at us when we would go. And what I realized was it's not where you start in life. It's where you finish. So they weren't laughing when we left with the trophy.
Right. And how did that make you feel being, the star in your community that was responsible for putting a lot of people on the map?
Humble, because I realized if you put your faith in God, nothing's impossible. But God doesn't give us blessings just for ourselves. You have to be able to help other people. And so I decided at some point that I would teach other people what I knew, which was there's always a way out and a way up if you believe in God and you believe in yourself.
And how do you use the athletics today to help other people?
Um, well, I have a daughter. Um, she passed away a couple of years ago, but she was a 10-time All-American and one of the top runners in America. And she actually made 2 Olympic teams. I have a son who actually got to go to any school he wanted to. He graduated from Princeton University, and he was a 3-time All-American. And he has about 6 Ivy League championships to his credit, out of 8 possibilities. He's an investment banker. And my oldest son, who had the same name as me, was the champion of the Army in the cruiserweight division, and he won the championship for the Army, and in 20 seconds, no less. So,
So
3
you
out
have
of 4 of my kids are
three
really top
kids.
athletes.
Great.
So
And
it works.
do you utilize that with other young people?
I do, and one of the ways I do it is I used to have a team called mock trial, where you have a team and they compete against other teams arguing legal problems. And whether it be academics or sports, you can utilize those skills to get scholarships.
And so speaking of scholarships, did you get a scholarship to go to college? Well, how did that?
I had somewhere between 6 and 10 scholarships, but I decided I wanted to go to school in New York. And I didn't have a scholarship for New York. I had a scholarship for schools in the South. So since I believed that if I went to an integrated school, I would fare better in the long run.
And what school did you wind up going to?
Well, I went to a bunch of colleges and graduated, thank God. SUNY, SUNY, Farmingdale. I got a degree in computers. Hofstra University, I got a degree in information systems and management technology. I went back to Hofstra to get another license to be a teacher. I went to Audrey Cohn, which is called the Manhattan College, to get a master's degree. I also have a Juris Doctorate from Toro, which is on Long Island in Central Islip. Central Islip? No. Is that Central Islip? It's an Islip. I don't remember if it's Central Islip or Islip. And I have some degrees that if I told you what they were, you probably never heard of them, but it's an insurance designation. You've heard the term, it's called the FLMI. It's the credentials to run an insurance company.
Okay. So was that straight after you went to college, straight out of school, high school, or where did your military career fall into that?
I was in college and I got drafted. There was a war going on. And
I'm sorry, were you the first person in your family to go to college?
I was the first person to graduate. My mother went to
Okay.
college, but she didn't graduate.
Okay. And I'm sorry, back to your military career.
So when I went into the military, much to my surprise, I didn't know that they could take you out of college and make you go to the military, but I found out. And they say you will report to this Army base. One of the things that I didn't know was that if you serve in the military, you're eligible for the GI Bill. But if you're injured and you get a pension, not only are you eligible for money, your children are too. So it turned out, now nobody wants to get shot 4 times, but it turned out that that became a benefit to not only me, but my kids.
Fantastic. Tell us about law school. Well, first tell me about the military. You were talking about going to the military. Tell me a little bit more. I know you came out with 4 Purple Hearts and Bronze Stars, but tell me how you got to that road.
Well, this is going to sound funny, but I'm going to tell the story because it's contextual. Um, I found out from my grandfather that I'm 67% Cherokee Indian, and he taught me how to hunt and track. And I started hunting at 6 years old. So I was actually hunting for 12 years. And when they put me in the military, they said, we're going to teach you how to shoot a gun. I went into the military from New York. So they didn't realize that I was a country boy that used to be able to, knock the eye out of a sparrow at 100 yards away. So they thought they were teaching me how to shoot. So needless to say, when I went into the Army, I could figure out where people went and came and, who went left, who went right. And they couldn't do that. So it was interesting because I then would be the person to find the people. And they were amazed at the fact that I could find them all the time. But it's to someone who's an Indian who can track, it's like they're leaving signs for me. They might break a bush. They might drop, not that they chewed gum, but they might drop a gum wrapper. The average person is walking looking like this. I'm walking looking like this. And so what that was easy to me, but they didn't know that I was Native American, so it didn't matter. But my point was, so whenever they sent me to look for somebody, I always found them. I'm just hoping they don't take back nothing if they see this.
Okay. So you went into the military, and this was Vietnam. You were in the Vietnam War. So tell me, how did that, having the ability to track, let's leapfrog, you came out with 4 Purple Hearts, so, and a Bronze Star, and a lot of accolades.
I was in 100 battles.
100 battles.
Me and 5 guys. I used to take my guys and we would get off from everybody else because everyone doesn't know what they're doing. You can't tell them, but they don't know what they're doing. And to give you one simple example, every day they would get on a truck and ride down the road. At least once a week, the enemy would blow the truck up on the road with a bomb under the road. So when they say, get on the truck and go down the road, either I'd say no, or I'd ride the truck, and when it turned the corner, I'd say, stop, we're getting off. Because when you keep repeating the same thing over and over and over, you're not fooling anybody, you're fooling yourself. Americans used to like to do things the easy way, except the easy way got you killed. So I would walk in the woods. It didn't matter how big.
And that was because you had developed that skill set from doing it as a kid, as tracking and hunting. You learned all those techniques.
Well, here's the other thing. They used to think that the enemy was stupid. The enemy was smart. He could figure out what we were going to do. So I would do the opposite, because he would be waiting for you to do what you normally do, which is ride the truck down the road. And he'd be on the side of the bushes ready to, do something to you. I'd be behind him, watching him, looking for me.
Okay. So what earned you 4 Purple Hearts?
I got shot 4 times. I was always first in every battle. The men were behind me. Trails are little. So if somebody came up, well, usually we were looking for them. If they saw us, they had to kill me in order to kill any of my men. I lost no men in Vietnam.
That's fantastic. And when you came home, how was that? How did that impact you when you came home? And, what do you feel the military did for you in terms of coming home?
Well, number one, it teaches you discipline. If you are able to stay alive, if you're able to be successful, you're doing something different than the person who didn't stay alive, and it's not luck. One example is this. I used to notice that if someone struck a match, you could see them strike that match a quarter mile away. So somebody wanting to take a cigarette break, striking a match at night, the enemy would know where you are. Now they could target your position with an artillery round or mortar. So if you're gonna be with me, you can't smoke. You can smoke in the daytime, but if you need to smoke that bad, you got to work with somebody else. I can't deal with that.
And how did you use that discipline when you came home?
It's the same discipline you use when you want to go to college or you want to study. If you're supposed to study 5 days, you don't study 3 or 4. You don't wait till the instructor says there'll be an exam. There's always an exam. Some exams are going to be told to you when they are, and some exams are going to be a pop quiz. So what you do is assume there's an exam every week and study every day.
So you went back, when you came from the military, you went back to school.
I went back to finish what I started.
And that allowed you to be the first college grad in your
Correct.
family. Awesome. So the next thing that I have as a first for you, you were in government services, Dr. McCord. Tell me a little bit about the first things you did in government services.
Okay. Some parents approached me one day to run for the school board, but my kids were in private school. So I said, what do you want me to be on the school board for? My kids don't go to public school. They said, your kids are smart. And I said, well, what does that mean? They said, you must know how to make people smart. I said, that doesn't mean that. They said, yeah, well, we want you on the school board. So I went to the school board. They ran me for the school board. I won in the school board election. And one of the things I noticed was one of the reasons the school was doing so poorly is they paid their teachers very poorly. A janitor starting out, I'll never forget this. It was really strange. A janitor starting out in the district I work for, so I don't want to say what district it is because nobody would believe it.
Okay, fine.
A janitor would make $19,000 to start high school education. A teacher with a college degree, they were paying $16,000. You almost can't believe this, can you?
Right.
So all the good teachers would stay there 2 or 3 years and leave and go somewhere else. So I spoke to people who had left, who lived in the community. And I said, why did you leave? You live here. And they said, I went to the next town and they gave me a $10,000 raise and I only had 5 classes, not 6. I said, so you're telling me they're giving you more money for less work? Interesting. So I spoke to the Board of Education and I said, we need to pay the teachers more money. They said, we don't have any money to give them. So I said, well, we're not gonna improve if we keep losing all the good teachers and starting off fresh. So they said, if you can go get the money, we'll let you pay the teachers. So I went and got the money. I went for $1 million and they gave me $1.5 million every year for the whole time I was on the Board of Education. I generated $6 million in about 2 or 3 weeks.
So you're the first in your family to
be a president of a school board.
President of the school board.
And from there, the government heard that I knew what I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
They knew I don't know if I knew what I was doing or not, but they heard that. And they offered me a job running 2 departments in the county government. And 6 months later, I think I saved $1 million in the first 60 days or something. So they gave me another project to close a budget gap. I did that in 6 weeks. And the next thing I know, they called me in and they put me in charge of a $500 million budget and 20 departments. And 3 years I was in the government, we didn't raise taxes.
That's great.
Because you had to get it approved by me to hire somebody. My logic was real simple. You do not need to raise the taxes on a senior citizen on a fixed income because somebody decides to play golf. What they used to do was when the golf course cost more money, they made everybody pay. That didn't make any sense.
Right.
Little old lady on Social Security don't play golf. Why she got to pay for your cart?
Right.
So I said, you got to raise the fees. They said, raise the fees? We don't ever raise the fees. I said, that's why you keep raising the taxes. I said, why are you making people who don't play golf pay more taxes? Let the golfer pay for that.
And I know you also were a certified teacher. How did that come about?
Well, here's the thing that I thought was really interesting. people used to elect people to be on the school board based on how popular you were. But when it came time to running a school, somebody would give you an academic issue. I'll never forget, I heard this word, tabula rasa. And I'm sitting there, this is before I went to teacher school, and I didn't know what that meant. And I was waiting to see if anybody else would ask the question. And everybody sat there not knowing what it meant and didn't ask any questions. So they had to vote now, but they didn't know what the people were talking about. So I said, how do you run something and you don't know what they're talking about? That's like being in charge of a hospital and you're not a surgeon, an anesthesiologist, or a nurse. So I said, there's no requirement to run a school district and make decisions, and you're not qualified to do it. Being a mother is a great profession. A parent is a great profession, but it doesn't qualify you to decide whether kids take trigonometry or calculus. You don't have any background for that. That's how come the district was paying janitors more money than they were paying teachers. That doesn't make any sense.
No, it doesn't, but it happens. It happens
all the time.
People,
So
teachers
needless to
are
say,
some of
I
our
got a
poorest
teacher's
payers.
I got a teacher's license because I wanted to understand fully what people were talking about so I could make an intelligent, informed decision.
And how did you utilize your teacher's license throughout your teaching career or your career in the school system?
I wrote curriculum so that I had kids in the 9th grade doing college work. Somebody said, why should they be able to do it? After a year, they didn't ask that question anymore. The kids realized if I can do college work, I can blow through this other work. So I've had interns that have worked in my office who actually skipped the 12th grade and went right to college. Got 11 scholarships. Now I worked with some really good guidance counselors. So we work as a team to get kids college credit, college courses, and be able to get the kinds of things that maybe my kids could get because I'm their dad. We tried to level the playing field by giving the kids the same environment that they'd have if they had parents that had the knowledge and the resources to give them that. And I knew it was critical because all of my children went to college long before they got to college. What it is if you expose somebody to something, they won't think it's a big deal when it comes time to apply.
Okay. And so you utilized all the learnings that you've had up to this point into putting that into kids. And so how do you help the next generation? How have you helped them with all of that knowledge, the teaching, the track? How do you put it all together in one
Well, I've
thing?
never had anybody that I wrote a letter to apply to college that didn't get accepted. Now, what that means is I got to know about the person. We had one young man in the church that didn't score high enough to get into college. I mentored him, and he improved by 600 points. I had a friend of mine who was also a pastor, who was a guidance counselor, and she said, McCord, if anybody else told me that, I wouldn't believe him. She said, but I know you can do this stuff. Mm-hmm. Even I was amazed because I was hoping he'd get like a 400, but he got like 600 points increased on his SAT score. Needless to say, my children have gotten, 2150s and those kinds of numbers. So I know it's doable, but you got to put the time and the effort into this.
And you also help them with athletic scholarships, getting scholarships, I understand.
Well, that's usually the first thing I go to because I can look at you and tell whether or not you have athletic ability. Academics, you got to do more research than that. You got to look at their report card. You got to look at their history, how they did on standardized tests. But I can look at you play sports and determine right away, do you have any skills or not? But I can also then determine, I played 5 sports. I can then determine, do I teach you something to make you better? And if I teach you this, will you get better? And usually within a half a season, I can make somebody better if they got potential.
Wow. And that helps them to get into colleges that
for free. For free, good number.
Yes, I love free. I'm always a free. You mentioned something about being in their church. So I know you're the first ordained minister in your family.
Also the first pastor in my family.
And the first pastor. So tell me a little about that in your church.
Well, interestingly enough, um, many people think that God is done with making disciples. Jesus came, he had 12, and he's finished. It's not true. I'll give one example. Martin Luther King actually went out and led marches because people were mistreated, they were denied rights, and he got beat like Jesus got beat. He got incarcerated like Jesus got incarcerated, and he actually lost his life. God is still in the business of telling people that I open the door for you and there's a way. And in order for him to do that, he takes people like Dr. King, like Barack Obama, like Mahatma Gandhi, like Nelson Mandela. He puts people out there that have such talent and such charisma that if you got half a brain, you'll realize what they're saying has validity. But you can't get nothing done without doing your part. In other words, faith without work is dead. So if you want to go to college, it's not enough to want. It's not enough to pray. You have to want, pray, and work. And the perfect example is this. David showed up to the battlefield and he had God behind him. But he brought a slingshot and 3 rocks. If he didn't use that slingshot to hit that giant upside his head, he wouldn't have fell down. When he fell down, he had to go there and take the giant's sword, because he didn't own one, and cut him up. My point is, it's not enough to want. You must do. Faith without work is dead. So as a kid, I learned that I had to practice if I wanted to be fast. In the Army, I had to pay attention if I didn't want my men to get killed. In law school, I had to study if I wanted to stay there, because guess what? Half the people that went in didn't finish. I didn't realize, nobody told me that. They let you in, but they'll let you out too, just as quick after 1 year. So my point is, there's always a part that we must do. Faith without work is dead. So as a teacher, I learned what it is you need to be able to do to know what it is you need to know. You shouldn't have to go to the review for the teacher to tell you what you should know. Every class, you should write down, what is it we were trying to learn? And we incorporate that in our sermons in our church. What is it today's lesson was about? What should you have gotten from this lesson? Because you can feel good all you want. When you have a good meal, you feel good, but you're hungry tomorrow. The idea is to feed. Jesus said to Peter, feed my sheep. He didn't mean feed them grass, and he didn't mean feed the sheep. He meant feed the people.
Absolutely. So you've given a great synopsis of how you've utilized your discipline, your teaching, what you learned, in your early life to impact others in their today lives. The second generation, because what I'm really trying to understand and focus on, there are people like you who've taken your learnings by being the first to do something, first track star, first in your family to be in the military, and you've turned all that around to help other people. And you've now impacted the next generation below you and even the third generation after that. You're still working on that. So we want to thank you, because I realize people that we see in our lives every day, we don't truly understand how important they were or the things that they bring to the table in being the first. And that's why I created this podcast, so we can celebrate the people in our lives. They don't have to be the movie stars on TV, or they're just working diligently for us, for the community, and to make sure that they leave the next generation in a better place. So thank you, Dr. McCord, for all that you've done. Thank you for your service.
Well, to God be the glory.
And to God be the glory always. He brought you through it, and we are thankful for that. Any closing words that you'd like to give, Dr. McCord?
Well, the closing words I would give is this. We will all stand before the throne of judgment one day. Many of us have long lives and some don't have long lives. But no matter how long our life is, God is going to ask us, what did we do with the life and the time he gave us? Now, when he asks that question, we need to be mindful of the fact that he has perfect knowledge of everything that occurred. I work to hear the words, well done. I'm not worried about getting to heaven. I want God to tell me, well done. So I don't go through the motions. See, many people go through the motions. It's like, think of a job where you show up, but you don't really do any work when you're there. You look like you're working, but you ain't working. When you work for God, you know that if you work that hard for man, you should work much harder for God. Because eternity is much longer than the life we have down here.
That's the truth.
And so working under God, what will your report be on that day? And what will he say? I work for one thing only. Well done, my good and faithful servant.
I think you've accomplished that. I'm looking at the picture behind you. That's Daniel in the lion's den, right?
Yes.
And in a lion's den at some point, and you've come out of your lion's den by coming out of the war, and now you're able to effectively help a lot of people in your community to be better, and the next generation and the next generation. So thank you so much for that, Dr. McCord. We appreciate you, and thank you for being a part of the first.
Thank you.
You're welcome. This is Dr. Sandi. Thank you so much for sharing your journey on the first, where no two stories are alike, even if the circumstances are similar. Let this discussion serve as inspiration for others to show what's possible, and more importantly, to produce seconds and thirds.